serious questions about how we're going after our known enemies. A year and a half ago, the United States blacklisted the deadly Haqqani Network. It's a terrorist organization, and that was the designation that we gave them. This Pakistani-based Taliban ally is responsible for some of the deadliest attacks on our soldiers in Afghanistan, and the designation is meant to crack down on them in a myriad of ways, especially who finances them. But now an exclusive report from the Daily Beast says there's simply no follow-up from us, not a dime seized to crack down on their operations because some lawmakers say politics is at play. Jonathan Schanzer is the Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He formerly worked with the Treasury Department as a terrorist analyst and was quoted in this piece in the Daily Beast. So, Jonathan, it's nice to have you back on the program.
Pleasure. Thanks, Jana.
Before we launch into this specific issue, let's just talk a little bit about what's at stake. The Haqqani Network has been described as the most violent, the most intransigent enemy of U.S. forces in Afghanistan. If we could cut off their financing, what would that mean?
Well, I think it would mean a significant blow to the Taliban. They've played, as you noted, a significant role, and we've seen from Treasury designations that they have a lifeline to, for example, financiers in Saudi Arabia and other places around the Gulf. They come back with huge amounts of cash, and they are able to finance attacks against the United States and allied forces.
So we're friends, quote unquote, with the Saudis. Why can't we crack down on the money going from Saudi Arabia to the Haqqani Network?
Well, this is an age-old question dating back to when we launched this designation program, if not before that. We know that the Saudis are a significant source of terror finance. We have worked with them to cut it down by perhaps even half, maybe even more than that. The problem is that there's still billions of dollars flowing, and a lot of it comes from what we would call deep pocket financiers, not necessarily the government itself, and so that remains a significant problem in the world of terror finance today.
As you see this issue with the Haqqani Network, what is preventing us from completely cracking down on their financing?
Well, look, Eli's piece, I think, was very interesting. It raised the question of whether there was political will. We've been obviously talking with the Taliban, trying to broker a ceasefire. This sounds an awful lot like what we're doing right now with Iran, you know, basically trying to talk to them about perhaps easing sanctions to make sure that they would work with us. But even if that's not the case, there are other issues at play. I mean, for example, in Pakistan, in these areas specifically where they're operating, or in Afghanistan, you're not looking at a formal financial sector. In other words, these guys aren't holding bank accounts that have dollar denominations that would allow us to freeze those. These guys are working in cash, they're working in drugs, they're doing money laundering. That's how they're bringing cash in, and that is exceedingly difficult for Treasury or any other agency for that matter to stop.
So it may be challenging, as you point out, and it's interesting that you point out Iran, because we've labeled Iran a state sponsor of terror, which is part of the reasons why we've gone through these sanctions, as you mentioned. Pakistan, the Pakistani military has supported, we know has connections to the Haqqani Network that are fighting our men and women in Afghanistan. So should we label Pakistan a state sponsor of terror? Would that be helpful?
Well, look, this has been a big question. We know that the Pakistanis have been involved in supporting the Taliban for many, many years, and I think there are nodes that we need to think about targeting. The problem is, it's the same problem we've had with the Saudis and perhaps other countries around the region, is that they're sort of frenemies, right? They're not exactly enemies, they're not exactly allies. We have a very delicate relationship with them, and so if we need things from them, like pipelines for our activities, for example, in Afghanistan, it's extremely difficult to challenge them in this way.
Do you think we're putting the pipelines and future projects that we might work together with them on ahead of our lives of our soldiers in Afghanistan?
Look, this is one of those things that I think, you know, difficult choices made by the White House, by the Defense Department. It shouldn't be an either-or proposition. We should be able to walk and chew gum here, and I'd certainly like to see us try.
Jonathan, great to see you as always. Thank you.
Pleasure.